Hello and welcome to another episode of Shuffling Notes, a channel where we appreciate music. I'm your co host, Prankit,
I'm your co-host Razi.
and today we will be discussing one of my absolute favorites. It's an Australian musician who goes by the name Tame Impala. So, Tame Impala is actually sort of, I guess, in the first few albums, it had more people involved, some other collaborators. But the album that we're discussing today is so recorded, performed, written, and produced by this one lone person called Kevin Parker. It's his third studio album released in 2015 called Currents. So, Razi, before we sort of get into it, have you had heard of Tame Impala like before this? Were you familiar with their music?
I no, I listened to this specific album before you sort of chose to listen to the specific album. Just I think a week or 2 weeks before. Some I was with someone and he played he played one of Tame Impala's songs. I think it was "Let It
From
Happen."
this album, was it?
Let It Happen, the first one.
Uh huh. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so that was on my list anyway. And then, well, came across the whole album, which
Synergy.
was as
Pure
this
coincidence, however you see it. Yeah.
like it was this chill album to get into, really. Like
Yeah.
specifically for this album, so far I've always sort of went track by track,
Hmm.
trying to decipher a story.
Yeah.
This one, well asked Alexa each time to shuffle the album Currents by Tame Impala,
Yeah.
because I think it's better to sort of enjoy the music just by not knowing what music this is. And started off
Yeah,
each time in a different way.
you don't know what to
It's
expect, what's going to
yeah,
come, right?
exactly,
Which is a lot
exactly.
like with the tracks. I like that. I like that. So I really only got into the music. So I got introduced to them through their latest album called The Slow Rush. I know I'm saying they. It is mostly Kevin Parker in all four albums. But yeah, so I only listened to their music very recently, like over the past 2 years. And then I started exploring their older albums, Inner Speaker, Lonerisms, Currents. And that's why, when I was trying to decide an album for this week's episode. And I was having a really hard time because I remember telling you I've got a few options and I'm trying to decide which one. I ended up going with Currents because I just think it's a great album anyway. I mean, to be fair, I was almost just trying to like flip a coin or something, but especially between the Slow Rush and the Currents, because the last two albums are my absolute favorites. But Inner Speaker and Lonerism, they're also pretty awesome. I know in the fan base, or at least I gather, a lot of the people who were fans of like the first album and the second album, there was a slight shift in musical direction with Currents. It became more
Okay.
sort of, let's say, dancey.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that because to me, like Inner Speaker, Lonerism, it's more of like your, like almost that 60s, 70s, like rock psychedelia, like, and it's great. But there's just something about Currents. It just feels like such a strange combination of genres and different timelines that, if you're trying to place this music, it's difficult to place it. You could place it in the 90s, you could place it in the 2020s. Like it's
Yeah,
it's a conundrum.
it's the album was quite. I mean, it was just a quite a chill breakup, right?
Yeah,
It's quite a chill, smooth transitioning,
yeah,
and sort of smooth letting goes, smooth disappointments,
yeah,
but they just sort of kick in with the bass, with the sort of R&B, which is quite sort of apparent in this album.
combined with like
It's
some psychedelic elements,
and
right?
then there are specific, those danceable numbers as well in this
Yeah.
album. Yeah.
So yeah, Kevin Parker, he's known to sort of really obsess over his music, especially like over the details, going over it with like a magnifying glass. And I think so. This album was actually delayed by 2 months
Okay.
initially because he just couldn't finish the tracks. And in one of the interviews, he even said, I think this was maybe just before the album came out or just when it came out. And he just said like something along the lines of like, I don't know how you guys are going to listen to this album because I still think it's unlistenable. Like, he was still obsessing over it, like whether it's right or not.
Yeah.
And you can imagine him like alone, in his mansion or whatever, just recording and just going over it.
He's in this
It was
like
sort of an
beach house
experience.
sort of setup,
Yeah.
which I there was this uh, Currents collector's edition video,
Hmm.
which was him sort of making sounds, looping them, adding more sounds, looping them, adding more
Yeah.
sounds, looping them, like sort of reaching. It was like I think it was a marketing video for Currents, but
Hmm.
it was so cool to see him like first go up, play the guitar, go up,
Yeah.
play like 5 notes, 6 notes on the keyboard and
Yeah.
loop it, and
Yeah.
then the same with singing and like he's just sort of looping everything and
Yeah.
um, going by that style, I think you can sort of figure it out. When I heard this album, I did not know Tame Impala was a single guy.
Hmm.
I think there was his what girlfriend with him and some
So
parts
no,
of it.
so
Not in this,
you
but
mean in
like
this album or?
in this journey of Tame Impala.
I'm not sure because I know that Tame Impala generally in the even the earlier albums. So Inner Speaker and then Inner Speaker had a few collaborators for the music production, but it was mostly Kevin. But I know when he performs live, he sort of has a group or he'll have other people performing, and so people always think that Tame Impala is like a group or like a
Mm-hmm.
band. But generally, it's mostly him just working out his stuff. So I mean, I know at some point, so he had this girlfriend that he broke up with. It was a French singer songwriter,
Mm-hmm.
and so there is that element of breaking up, in this album as you identified, like the chill breakup.
Yeah.
But I know that Kevin in an interview he does say he doesn't classify it as just a breakup album. For him, it's more about like transformation,
Yeah.
and he said this a really nice thing. I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but the title of the album is Currents, and it's all about how in life sometimes there's currents, and sometimes you just have to sort of flow with it. You can't fight it. If you try and
Yeah.
fight it, you'll end up in a bad place, and you kind of just have to let it go, let life do its thing, and you'll come out, the other end a different person.
It's a
And
hard
this
way.
is not exactly how you worded it, but I just thought it works so well, and you can see in the album art as well. You've got the currents, and you've
Yeah.
got that ball just sort of flowing
Going
with it.
through it. Yeah.
And with this sort of slight change in musical style with this album as well, what he said was, so he felt that like songs that are outside of like the traditional psychedelic genre, which is often more like guitar based, right? It's almost like Pink Floyd music.
Mm-hmm.
He think that even songs outside of that genre could possess those psychedelic qualities, and he sort of came to that realization while he was under the influence of shrooms and some cocaine and he was listening to Staying Alive. So he sort of just had this thing where he kind of was like, you know what, let me try something crazy out there, let's make some dancey music, but I'm going to make it more psychedelic. um, and
I
yeah, I mean, it's
wouldn't say it's psychedelic.
it has elements and qualities that pull towards, I think.
Yes, maybe like
Yeah.
for some of the songs, for I think 2 songs, 3 songs, it's like it's got this really psychedelic aspect from
Yeah.
the perspective of lyrics, from the
Yeah.
way like the music sort of um, the channels playing around, the music
Yeah.
sort of zooming
It
out and
does
then zooming back
transform you a
in.
little bit to somewhere else, right? In like,
I
if
mean,
you're
the
just listening
transformation
to it, and
starts from the first song itself, which is where it
yeah.
happened with. I mean, it's well, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I think he said, like, the only rule with this album was to make an attempt to abandon the rules that I'd set up in the past. So that was pretty cool as well. So he sort of, that's why, I mean, he said it himself, some of the tracks or some of the music he's played around with, he considers like cheesy, or like
Mhm,
traditionally it's like taboo for an artist like him to play
mhm,
around with those type of effects in music.
mhm.
But he just sort of, just went with it, just did what he wanted to.
It was, I mean, his jam pad was
Yeah,
really something that was fascinating to see. Like,
yeah.
and someone sort of, it was like a beach view facing kind of
Hmm.
condo hall area, which where he's got like this drum setup, guitar,
Hmm.
keyboard, different instruments, and
Yeah,
just like going around looping it, going around looping it, going around looping it was
hmm,
quite fascinating to see like someone playing or someone being in tune of their own songs and knowing so many instruments of how they can fit in
yeah.
like that and even in this since I got to know that it's a one man
Hmm.
show, so this
Hmm.
album sort of gave me that vibe. Once you figure it out that it's one person doing the music and the voice
Yeah,
and the writing, and
all
he's
of
telling
it.
his life in a
Yeah,
way, like moments of his life.
yeah.
So it just kind of fascinated, and yeah, it's gripping, the
Yeah, he's a very, very, yeah, very special
catchy,
individual.
gripping. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that the first album they recorded it in. So that was him, and there were some collaborators involved in the first album. I
Mhm.
think it's the first album. In a Speaker is the one that he recorded on. Like there was like this island almost, and there was like almost like a mansion type of place on an island where they had everything set up, but
Mhm.
they had like water leaking from the roofs. They had random power cuts, throughout the day. Like he so many times he lost like the drum beat he was working on the looping, or like he lost like a whole day's worth of recording and stuff. But I think that was for, I think it was the first album, but he says like it helped with that song creating process and waking up seeing that amazing view that he had. So
Yeah.
he is that sort of person to just like it is art, and production is a big part of it, but I think he's got that like auto musical sense that he's chasing after. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
given like it was more like a passion project. This one,
Yeah.
given
Passion
it's a
project. That's
given
a
it's
good
a
way to put it.
concept album as well. Like it's
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah. And I like that as well in artists. Like I know when people don't often like it when the artists change up their music, but
Hmm.
I do appreciate it, and it's both in movies as well as music. When it's a director or it's some sort of person you follow, when they take on something new, it to me it's always exciting because they've done the other thing before. There's no point in doing. I mean, you could do the same thing over and over, and there are artists who do that, which is fine. But to me, what stands out is when every time they do something which is completely different and subverts expectations. Like you're expecting it to be a rock album, and it's completely something else. So I always appreciate that, and I'm glad that he sort of also has been going through that sort of journey, right?
Yeah. But yes, this was something new for me to get into because
Yeah.
this was R&B, but it was. I think it again, like I think it's the psychedelic element which made me like it. Otherwise, I'm not that big an
It's the same with
R&B
me.
fan.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I won't enjoy R&B just sort of listening and sitting down and listening to it.
Yeah.
I mean, either you have to be like in a setting, in an environment to enjoy R&B, but this was just chill.
Well, that's the exact words I told you before telling you the artist, right? I
Yeah.
was like, well, the next one's gonna be really chill. That's the way to put it, right? That's it. That's the video. I think you summed it up in one word. I don't know what we're doing here. So on that note,
Yep.
let's jump into it track by track. So the first track is titled "Let It Happen" at 7 minutes and 48 seconds. So yeah, I think this album, really captures what I was trying to say about currents as a concept, because like the lyrics off the bat, right? Like it's always around me, all this noise, not nearly as loud as the voice saying "let it happen." So it's like you're kind of going with the flow, and the
Yeah.
music makes you kind of go with the flow. I almost feel like whatever your musical tastes are, if this is playing, you'll just let it play. Like I don't see anyone switching this off because like I don't like this type of music, because it's just chill. You'll just let it play. Um,
Yeah.
but just a bit of background before before I get into the details. But the song itself, I think, was written in various different places. I think he started writing it in like a hotel room, and then he was at a festival for some other part of it. And he was on a train in France when like he started working. Where it starts looping up, and it's like the CD is stuck or something.
Around
So
4 minutes.
it's
Yeah.
a song. Yeah, sorry.
At around 4 minutes, it like loops. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's written it in different parts, and you could kind of feel it because it is a long track, right? It's for an opening track, I'd say 7 minutes compared to the length of the other tracks. It is on the longer side.
True. But it's got that, in the lyrics, and I have also, as we go through the tracks, like there's also this part of his implied meaning to the lyrics. Like he's saying things as they should be implied while he's singing it, sort of like
Hmm.
this one sort of going with the flow of the river, which is let it happen, which is
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's the beat, and the beat continues, and then it's like
yeah,
it loops around for a minute, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and then boom, you're back to the letting it happen part.
yeah,
But
yeah. No,
yeah,
it's true.
it's like a very good first song, and it's got this. I
It
noticed this
hooks you in.
one bit of detail I noticed was that I think that in the middle part or in the beginning part, there's this like after the third or fourth beat, there's a clap. No, sorry. After three beats of clap, there isn't a clap, and then
Oh, I see.
there are so like
Interesting. Yeah,
it's got that little tiny
yeah,
pieces of like um, silence as well, but they sort of beat with like the beats that are going, the claps go with it, and then
yeah.
it just hits back. It's like it's very well produced, I must say,
Well, I
for
think
a
you summed it up really
single
well
man
earlier
to
when,
do it.
yeah, when you said it's like a passion project, because that really, like, every detail, right, of the
Yeah.
track and the melody and like all the different tracks in the background, that he's paid a lot of attention to that, or like how it should change or what should happen. When he says like all this running around, like there's like, again, there's some sort of like change in pitch or scale. Like it's hard to put your finger on it without actually
Mhm.
trying to play the tune out, but it's just done in a way where, again, it's not like a traditional melody. There's strange things happening, but it's subtle. It's not so in your face that you feel like it's off-putting, because sometimes when you have psychedelic music, it can be so out there that as soon as you start playing it, it just kind of takes you out of it, or like you have to
Mhm.
get in the zone.
Mhm.
But this kind of just takes you on a ride a little bit slowly, right? The music and all of it,
So,
and it's so refreshing
like,
as well.
is are his previous albums also like with this atmospheric kind of vocals?
Yeah. So the vocal style is pretty much the same, where he uses like this very light vocal,
Hmm.
like, and the audio, that like the amplitude of the vocals is relatively low compared to the rest of the music.
Right.
But and it's also chill, his other albums. But there's definitely much more sort of like guitars, almost like like that Pink Floyd guitaring
Hmm.
style, I'd say. Like that sort of music in his earlier albums. It's more like rock psychedelic as opposed to this. So at the 5.5 minute mark, there's like, if you pay attention to it, he's not actually singing any words. It's just like gibberish. It's like made up words. It sounds like he's singing something, and so I looked into it, and so apparently he when he was writing the song, he just sort of like sang it in gibberish because he didn't have the lyrics written out, and
Okay.
later on he wrote lyrics, but when he
Yeah.
tried to record the lyrics, it just didn't work. Like they didn't sound as like groovy as like the rest of the track. So he kept the gibberish in.
Okay. Okay.
But
Like, I
yeah,
mean,
I mean, I think it's an
that's
excellent
something.
first track.
That's something. Well, even as old as say Doors have done. I mean,
Yeah,
Simon and Garfunkel, they used to do it.
yeah,
Like, singing out gibberish because it rhymes well, sort of, with the music. And yeah, I
mm-hmm.
mean, it's a creative choice. And again, like coming back to the point which you mentioned, which you mentioned that I mentioned, which is it's a passion project.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. So then from this ultra, I'd say longer track of 7 minute 48 seconds, we get to Nangs, if that's how it's pronounced, at 1 minute and 47 seconds. But is there something more than that? But yeah, I think this is almost, it's like a musical interlude in the album. Usually you have these like halfway through, like when you're listening to an album,
Yeah, yeah.
usually the middle track will be like this short musical section that breaks up the first half and the second half. So again, very interesting choice for a second track. All right. Um, but yeah, I guess cool. Like it's sort of the lyrics are vague. The lyrics have always been vague when it comes to Tame Impala.
Mhm,
It's very rare that the lyrics are very literal,
mhm.
but this one is like super vague. But I guess there is some existential element to it. Is there something more than that, like life or some love or whatever situation you want to put it in?
But do you know Nangs, the meaning Nangs of Nangs?
No idea.
So it's actually an Australian slang term for N2O, the stuff they give you at the dentist as an anesthetic. So people also use it recreationally because it makes you feel really weird and dissociated with reality for a
Mm-hmm.
minute or two. The
Mm-hmm.
the term came around because of the sound it makes after it kicks in.
Yeah.
The sound it makes,
Oh,
yeah. So like it makes a sound after it kicks in, or maybe you make a sound after it
interesting.
kicks in. But yeah, so it's
Interesting.
basically it's
I know.
basically
I
an
know. It's
anesthetic.
like here. You well here. Um, I know that you could get it. Well, a while back in like balloons, right? Like nitrous laughing gas.
Yeah.
Uh, I wonder. I wouldn't. Yeah. I don't know about the sounds part. But to be fair, I've never tried it myself. Um,
So me need a root
but I
canal
wonder how
very
it
soon.
relates to the song as well.
I need a root canal very soon. I need stuff.
Yeah. But
But
yeah, I think
yeah.
musically as well, it's this track coming off the first track. One of the similarities I noticed, in the first track, in Let It Happen, there's like that glitch where the CD gets stuck.
Mhm.
In this track, at about like the 1 minute 3 second mark, again, there's a bit of a glitch where the audio goes off pitch. Like when you listen to cassettes, well,
Mhm.
back in the day, sometimes when you play them or pause them, they go kind of off pitch and come back. And
Yeah.
there was that element, and it kind of, I guess it's the reason it's sort of there. It pulls you back in like a nostalgic way where it feels like it's almost like 90s music, but then it's all done with like modern synthesizers and all of that.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a nice touch.
I think this is a song with sort of uh, the the lyrics, the vocals sort of are the instrument for the instruments. If I'm making
Say that
sense.
again. Say that again, but slowly.
So the vocals, because they're repeating themselves, so they're like
Yeah.
on a beat, and
Mm.
that's the beat that the instruments play on.
I
Even yeah,
see.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they kick in. I think the beats kick in at about
Mm-hmm.
57 seconds, but
Yeah.
even the beats, like, because that the flow of the is something more than that, doesn't
Yeah.
change. Like it keeps looping itself while he's adding beats and removing beats and
Yeah. Yeah.
playing around a little bit with
You're getting
the
like in his
mixer and
head,
stuff.
like how he mixed it, He started off with that like hook of him just singing, but is there something more than that? Started adding more
Maybe,
music.
yeah, like it would make sense that way because that's
Yeah.
all
We need to
he's
get him
saying.
on the show and ask him.
One day.
Yeah. But I think
The first
it's
feels
a
first
short track,
feels
but
with
yeah,
Kevin Parker. First feels of a Tame
exactly.
Impala album with Kevin Parker.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. Where he was like, this new album is completely unlistenable. But yeah, I think it's yeah, it's probably he's definitely an interesting person to talk to. But yeah, I mean the music, even though this is a short track, there's so much happening again, and again an interesting place to put this track as well, being the second track. I'm curious as to like how he came to that decision as well. Um,
maybe
but yeah,
maybe like taking
coming
or
off, yeah,
carrying forward a theme from Let It Happen this to the moment. Like we'll get to know once we sort of
yeah,
decipher the other ones. But let's see.
could be. And then yeah, so from Nangs we get to the moment at 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So this track is a sort of a precursor, or you could say like an earlier version of one of my like all-time favorite Tame Impala songs called Lost in Yesterday, which is in the next album. And that is actually the song how I really fell in love with Tame Impala, and then I started exploring their other albums. And in this track, like the beat and the rhythm and the melody, and especially at the 2 minute 22-second mark, the music that's playing
Uh-huh.
is very close to how he sings it in that other song, Lost in Yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, very, very similar. So yeah, I mean the beat and the musical melody is very similar, but it's definitely an earlier version. And to be honest, I don't know which version I enjoy more, but Lost in Yesterday is the one I'd heard first. So that's and it's one of my favorite tracks, which is why I almost chose the other album, The Slow Rush. I really couldn't decide, but I thought, you know what, this sort of has that track in it in a way. And it has some other great tracks as well. So I ended up going with Currents. But yeah, what did you think of this track?
So the moment is like it's a big build up towards this moment which is getting closer, but we still don't make it because right you just
I just, my note, one of the points I wrote was it's like something is about to happen. It's like the whole track is that last minute anxiety you get. Like just
yeah.
before you're about to talk to that girl, or just before you're like going on stage, or whatever it is happening. And this is just that build up.
I
The
mean
moment.
I've got like a breakdown of few lines. It's like
Mm-hmm.
in the end it's stronger than I know how to be, and I can't
Yeah.
just spend my whole lifetime wondering. She's like the relationship is like is stronger than he originally thought, and he's
Mm-hmm.
he's wondering what it would have been like if you know they had a relationship that wasn't supposed to be hidden anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like in like it's out there, like something.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just deep diving into
Yeah.
the way he's singing it and what he's singing in there. So, and then, I fell in love with the sound of my heels on the wooden floor. I don't want our footsteps to be silent anymore. This is something that I really liked as lyrics because it's like I fell in love with the sound of my heels on the wooden floor. That's basically like he sort of knows the sounds that happen around him, but like now, noticing his lover or whoever, um, to be like, walking in silent footsteps
Yeah.
is something that sort of also plays a part in
Yeah.
this, because
Amazing.
he
I never paid that much attention to the lyrics on this track, but
and yeah, then
nice.
there's two more, which is
Yeah.
want them to be in the moment where you start grooving with the song. Then storm clouds are closing in, and then again, like he's sort of um, in that moment of sort of current goosebumps moment. When you're there, like, are you going to face your lover with
Yeah.
her lover, which you are not now?
Yeah.
And then, like, the storm clouds are closing in as he's sort of progressing towards the girl for like an ultimatum that, like, this is it. And in the end, it's gone, and there's nothing left to do. But I'm still not certain just how I'm gonna feel again. Like, uh, if I do this, and I leave her, okay, then will I want to leave her? I think I'll be okay. That's sort of, I've been there.
You really relate to it.
So hence I could like sort of yeah, that.
Nice.
And then, like, in the end,
Yeah.
when he's singing the part, it's getting closer. Like the channels
Yeah.
start switching like
Yeah.
rapidly, and um, that's sort of again like adding to the build up, but not getting there,
Yeah.
because we don't drop the beat.
Yeah, and
But
to me, that
yeah,
it almost feels like anxiety, like to the moment, where you start feeling like it's an excitement, combination of excitement, and there's a bit of anxiety to
yeah,
like, okay, it's happening, it's coming.
yeah.
And I think it really conveys that, the music, right? Cool. And then we get to Yes, I'm Changing at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So I think this track is even more laid back than the first few tracks. In like, it starts so smoothly. But to me, this is like much more evidently like a breakup song. Like there's many lines in it. There's no future left for you and me. Like it's very evident. It is sort of a breakup song.
I mean, the song is
But
very
I think
evident from its beats,
yeah,
because as I mentioned, like I used to shuffle the tracks, and
yeah,
this is the song that I knew once it started. I knew Let It Happen as well, but this is
yeah.
the like one of the new songs which I knew
You'd
without
recognize it instantly.
without like actually playing it specifically on the phone or
Yeah,
something. Yeah. But it's got that, the beat sort of itself say, yes, I'm changing. Once you listen to it, I think 2 times, 3 times, it's gonna say
yeah.
it by itself.
Yeah. And I think lyrically as well, this song grabs my attention a bit more in a couple of places. And one of the places, when he says like, they say people never change, but that's bullshit. And that bullshit just comes out of nowhere, right? Because it's just so blunt and
Yeah.
straightforward. And I think it works so well
That's
in
what I
like,
mean. Like,
that's
it's
what
the
he's
way
trying to be
he's
straightforward.
implying his words, the well, the kind of way they should be implied. Like the way he says bullshit over here, for example, as
Yeah.
it's gripping because he's not singing it. He's telling you people never change, but
He
they
just
say
says it.
people never change, but that's bullshit.
Yeah, he
You
just says it,
know?
right? It's very blunt. Yeah, so it's quite unique. And I think to me the music, especially in the beginning, when you got the synth and it's like sort of just it's changing like these 4 chords or however many there are. It really reminds me of like chicane style music, like that slow
Mhm,
synth and it's just slowly changing.
mhm.
It just feels very reminiscent of like a chicane type track. But
Maybe that's
still,
why it,
unique.
like, starting out, yes, I got to know the song, but I also, this starting out, this also got to be like favorite track because I just got since I knew the song, I could sing it along, and again, like the bullshit sort of was the attraction as well. Like
Yeah.
you've got to sing that part. but
Yeah, you have to.
but
Uh,
besides
and it
that,
builds like it builds a nice ambience as well, like throughout the track, with its laid back nature, and like the 3 minute 10-second mark, there's like this almost like this ambient noise where you can hear like
like the
traffic
roads,
sounds
yeah,
in the
like the
left
road,
channel.
yeah, traffic.
Yeah, like you're in an apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear all that traffic and noise going through while he's like
I had to.
changing.
I was listening to it on like speakers and louder
Yeah,
volume, and I actually had to pause it to make sure whether it's actually the song which
yeah,
has the traffic sound, or is there like a traffic
yeah.
jam outside or something.
Long-time viewers will be familiar with the traffic noise outside of Razi's apartment, or older apartment, shall I say?
Every apartment, I think.
Every apartment. Yeah.
But to what you were saying, like I've written the same thing. Probably the first song so far, which is more chill,
Yeah, even
and
more somehow. It's even more chill.
and telling so, and the whole song is basically this guy Kevin Parker in this case telling his side of the story, and uh, his side of the story of how it's changing and how he's changing and how things will change and that you know things won't happen again. People, but and they say that people never change. That's bullshit. But because
Yeah,
I'm changing. Yes, I'm
yeah.
changing.
There's like a strange acceptance as well in the
Yeah.
song to that. And it goes to that theme of currents as well, just kind of going with the flow, like you're changing, accept it. Don't try to fight it. Um, you're growing.
So I've sort of tried to sum this in one line, which is probably about how cool or good it would be for us to change walking out of this relationship because
Hmm.
the singer is helplessly changing. Because he even sings it, I think, once that I'm helplessly changing. That it's happening, and
Yeah,
coming down from letting it happen, it's happening now.
yeah.
So
Like personal transformation. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it goes with the theme very much.
yeah. Excellent. And then we get to eventually at 5 minute and 19 seconds. And so in musically as well, it sort of starts off with like it's almost like a guitar being plugged into an amp. Like there's some buzzing and almost like feedback.
And then boom,
But
you're into the music.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a transition from the previous track, right?
The way it
Because it's
starts,
not as laid back, and the music is a bit louder and faster.
yeah, with the
And like that sort of buzzing sound in the beginning, it pulls you out of it. It's like, okay, there's a change, there's a transition.
yeah, yeah. There's
Hmm.
a change of, well, in this case, instruments. Because when you're like plugging in the amp, that's the sound, the feedback sound that you get. Like that's the sound, and
Yeah,
then you plug
exactly.
it in, and as soon as you plug it in,
Yeah,
like you just bam into the song. But
exactly. And like, there's some interesting stuff. So like, when he's playing the synth, there's when he holds on to a chord, especially in the beginning. I don't know if you notice, it's like a flickering. Like the sound starts flickering. It's like it holds still and then it starts flickering, and it's kind of like it adds to this ambience that it creates. And I think at the 3 minute 14-second mark, there's like this melody playing in the left channel, and it just feels so nostalgic. Like there's this quality to it that kind of pulls you back, right?
there's this part, there's like a break at the 150 mark, which
Mm-hmm.
brings this, which starts this music of um,
I hear it like the ting ting ting
Hmm.
ting when
and
it pauses, right?
and then you just like I think at 212 you just boom into the wish I could tell you.
Yeah, yeah,
And but this whole thing is like that. So for example, this break was like spending time, as he's mentioning in the part previous to this, like
yeah,
that you spend some time over time, it's gonna be fine.
yeah,
Eventually, it's gonna be fine. So this is like
yeah,
spending time, and that's I just saw this sort of uh,
yeah,
branching out story, which is then then he starts with the "Wish I Could Tell You" part, which is like when you when you're just whiling time away, you just have these thoughts, recurring thoughts that
yeah,
overthinkers do,
yeah,
which he clearly
yeah,
is. I mean, talk about sitting in a beach house and making your own
yeah,
music,
yeah,
and yeah, it's just then. Yeah, so then he starts off with the "Wish I Could Tell You," and then he starts imagining stuff like as one word. I could relate a lot with Tame
yeah,
Impala,
yeah.
but
This track as well. Yeah,
you can sort of see that if you sort of start thinking to yourself that okay, if I wasn't in your life, you wouldn't have to go through these changes.
so that is one of the lines I wrote down. Like, I love that line. Like, wish I could turn you back into a stranger, because
Yeah.
if was never in your life, you wouldn't have to change it. And I thought, wow, that is like, this guy is going through some shit.
But yeah, I mean that's a thought that is
Yeah.
when you're like overthinking about something,
Hmm.
specifically a breakup or
Yeah.
a situation within your relationship. That's sometimes what you think that okay,
Hmm.
fine, because there is so much love, maybe because you just want it to be a smoother relationship. However, but there is this part where you think, if I wasn't there, would it have been better for you?
Yeah.
Is the question that sort of he also comes up with. But the whole thing is mostly just like whatever happens, however it happens, eventually we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Eventually.
eventually you'll be happier.
Yeah. And he does this thing as well where, like, I think the first time or one of the times he does it is at the 3 minute 33 second mark, where again he takes the vocals and he like reverses the audio, um, so the audio is playing backwards. And he does it at the 3 minute 54 second mark as well. It's with the piano, as in it happens a couple of times. These are the timestamps where I noted
Mm-hmm.
it down, but it's quite unique in this track where he takes an instrument or vocal and it's just like a second or 2 seconds of it, but it's played backwards. So the audio, instead of like with a piano when you hit the chords,
Mm-hmm.
it's loud tone and then it softens. It's like backwards.
So it's
So
a
I thought that was
soft
quite
tone that
interesting.
loudens.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you hear it, once you know what you look to, anytime you hear like a reversed audio, you can almost tell, oh, this has been reversed. Because it sounds unnatural, but
Right.
it's like that soft getting louder and then dropping off the cliff, sort of.
Right.
And yeah, so then from eventually you get to Gossip, which is mere 55 seconds. So yeah, Gossip. I think this is like the actual interlude of the track, right?
Of the
Of the
album.
album. Yeah. Where it sort of breaks up the album a little bit. Very short,
Yeah.
some interesting sounds with a bit of guitar.
Um, I read a Reddit theory, I think, Reddit or
Wow.
some article, which was uh, which titled "This is my theory on gossip" by Tame Impala. But
Yeah.
the theory was that these sounds, the what it starts with, is like people gossiping, and the guitar
Uh-huh.
is the is yourself sort of tuning into um, you know sort of silencing the gossip, which happens in the
Yeah.
end, because in the end it ends with a guitar tune rather than the gossip ends like 2-3 seconds before the end of the song, and the guitar
Yeah.
sort of um, fluctuates the tune and in at the end, and that's where the song like stops. But that's just one of, because I it's a
Well, it's a good theory for
yeah, I
fellow
mean
Redditor.
it's just it's a theory one, plus it's a
Yeah.
I there's nothing to say about the song that I have.
Yeah, no, I agree because it is quite like it is essentially like a musical interlude. But I do like that theory because I was wondering like why is it called gossip? You know, uh,
But
but
yeah,
yeah,
that made sense
the
with
music
the
in the beginning,
album, yeah,
especially like it's reminiscent of a
and
gossip
also
that
the
left and
channel
right.
shifting, yeah,
Yeah, it's like people whispering in your ears, right?
something like that. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, the more you know, and from there we get to the less I know, the better. At 3 minutes 38 seconds. So very groovy. I've got a bit of an excerpt here from Kevin because so initially he really felt like this track wouldn't be on like a Tame Impala album because he says it's more like disco funk and there's
Yeah.
like a cheesiness or like a dorkiness to it. Um, and like the lyrics are pretty dorky and all of that, but then I don't know, it just fit in. Like so apparently he had been like obsessed with like disco music
Mm-hmm.
for like a year or two,
Okay.
and so he ended up putting this in. Another interesting thing he said was like he doesn't remember whether it was for this track or whether it was for a later track called "Cause I'm a Man." It's one of the other tracks that he did like 1,000 partial vocal takes because he was just like obsessing over getting it exactly how he wants the voice to sound.
Okay, I mean
But
that's
yeah,
that's a number to give.
yeah, he was specific. He said 1,057 partial
Wow.
vocal takes. He was
Wow.
specific about that, but he couldn't remember whether it was this track or "Cause I'm a Man."
Okay.
Because I'm guessing both the tracks he really obsessed over them. Um, but yeah, I think the lyrics of this track are again a bit more straightforward. Like it is definitely that like she's with someone else now sort of
Trevor.
thing. Although like the breakup is not, I don't know if it's explicit. Like it could be a crush, but it is like seeing someone you love with someone else.
I took the song to be more about like broken promises. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, well,
and in the end, like sort of agreeing to the fact that ignorance is bliss.
yeah, yeah.
The
Because
less
his
I know, the
mind is like
better.
going obsessing over it, like she's with him, and
You
but
know,
it's
in
like
the
she
end,
said,
why is it
it's not. Yeah,
Superman specifically? Come on, Superman, say your stupid line. Like, why is that? Like, has Parker like given any statement for that, or have you read
not
something?
that I've found.
Because I mean, it's,
Yeah.
or is it like Superman being the beacon of hope? Then sort of, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's room for interpretation, but he says like she said it's not now or never. We'll wait 10 years. We'll be together, and it's sort of like I get the feeling like she's stringing him along, like maybe they were in a relationship or they were not, but it was sort of like, oh, but this is not the right time, but maybe in a bit, and like, and so a lot of that is
Been
is
there.
is like brought out. I think. I don't know if you've seen the music video for this. It's
Not for this
interesting to
one.
say the least. And I think the first track as well has a music video, which was pretty fun. This I won't spoil it for you. Watch it. It's fun.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I think musically, there's like it starts off and there's like two very simple but very effective guitar riffs playing,
Mm-hmm.
one in each channel. Like for most of the song, they're just repeating. except for like the chorus, oh my love, can't you see yourself by my side part,
Mm-hmm.
where the tune also changes a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like the choruses of some of these songs are so understated, but they still stand out from the verse. Because like usually choruses are like an anthem, right? Like you sing along and it's loud. But in some of these tracks, they're just their own thing without necessarily
They sort of
sounding like an anthem.
the choruses sort of flow into the verses,
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah,
yeah,
is how the best I can put it is how that would make sense. Otherwise, the chorus is always
yeah.
something that, is going to
Sticks
sort
out.
of, go round back to the same thumping, same tune, or however.
Well, it's
But
supposed to be like generally they're loud and catchy, but they're like an anthem. Like you sing along and it's like it's the chorus.
yeah,
But in
yeah,
these tracks, in this one as well, it's sort of very subtle. It kind of just happens and you don't think about it. Like you don't really think, oh, this is the chorus of the song, unless you're trying to like identify it.
yeah, true.
Like for a lot of these tracks, right? You can't just be like, oh yeah, that oh the chorus of that song, this is what it is. Like you gotta have to think, like, wait, shit, which is the
I don't,
chorus? What was the chorus?
because I see this, for example, less I know the better. It rhymes with Trevor, forever,
Yeah.
um, um,
Mhm.
and
I can't remember.
and yeah, it's like less I know
Yeah.
the better. So it sort of fits into
Yeah.
the verses sort of fit into the chorus, or the chorus sort of fit into the verse.
Heather,
Something.
try your luck with Heather.
So yeah, a little convenient for him for one breakup story to have
All
Trevor,
these names.
Heather, uh, and the less I know, the better.
Mm.
But it's a song, and it yeah it mainly sort of gave out the ignorance is bliss kind of vibe. That it's better for
Yeah.
me to not know than for me to obsess over it and find out and be sad about it later, or regret it
Mm.
later, regret knowing it later. It's better that I don't know that you are holding hands with Trevor, for example.
Yeah, it is that thing where like you like this tendency for like someone to just obsess, right? Like okay, if
Yeah.
especially if that person is with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
it's like going over it and just being like imagining it in your head and like that sort of thing.
True.
Hmm. So uh, from the less I know, I better, we get to past life at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. So yeah, an interesting track. Like it's got this combination of like a voiceover or spoken words with some
Yeah.
really chill, laid back music, right? It's like an ethereal
And
quality to it.
so, who's the one speaking?
It's a good point.
Is
I
it
don't actually know. I wonder if it's his own voice modulated because it's a
is what
modulated
I
voice,
thought
right?
as well? Yeah, is what I thought as well. Because, but like it's I don't know. It's interesting to see that voice speaking as like this maybe middle-aged man in this heavy
Deep
bass
voice.
full of tune, sorry, voice, and then him singing while the singing is sort of shifting like that in the channels, and yeah, that's it's just an interesting play of sounds again, and it's like this one I kind of saw as a full-fledged story, like a visual story, because maybe he's like just sort of saying it to himself or saying it to someone on the phone, which it sounds like, and he and as soon as like the past life, that kick comes in, and he, you can sort of, okay, like imagine the character sitting down on the phone, like, disconnecting the phone down, and then the environment around him sort of like pushes out into this past life,
Yeah, yeah.
right into the past life, and which can, like, I can
Memories.
make
Yeah,
something good out of this song.
nice.
Like just the song and the lyrics just gave me
Yeah.
the
I mean, it does feel like a track
idea.
primed for something like that, you know? It's almost like a little short movie sort of thing going on
It's
with like
it's
the
got it's
voiceover
got
and
a
the
full
talking.
story. Like generally songs are a story. Like they are a
Yeah.
perspective of story, or like a demand or something like that. But this
Hmm.
one is actually a story being narrated by this person where the in betweens are being played out in the song,
Yeah, yeah.
right? The in betweens of his real time self are being played out in the song,
Yeah.
and it ends with him calling her back and picking
Yeah.
up and hello, and you don't know what happens then.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It leaves you on that hook. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
It is quite unique. I mean, it reminds me because there's some other tracks, you know, there's like with Jason Mraz, Details in the Fabric, where you have like the
it's
phone
not
call, and
exactly, yeah.
even Eminem's got tracks. So it does remind me a little bit of that, but obviously this one just goes all out because the whole track is him talking, and then singing is like this thing that happens in between almost, and in the background. There was this one line I picked out. I thought it was really nice. It was, I thought I was moving on, but I guess I was just switching off. And I think there's
Yeah,
such a fine line between the two because it happens, right? And not just relationships, but other things. You think you've moved on, but you didn't really. You just shut yourself off from it. And it's different from accepting it and
yeah,
moving on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why it was really well put.
Yeah, been there.
Hey. But yeah, another quite groovy track.
It's I think more than groovy, uh, it's reaching out a point, you know. While it's mostly singing from the past, it's still reaching a point out that maybe nostalgia, maybe he's
Yeah,
kicking into nostalgia is what it's about, or maybe he's kicking into a time of the relationship, a time, I, I don't know, like the reasons why he misses her is in the past life. Like I think, yeah, that would make sense.
and it feels like a past life sometimes, right? Like a past
Because
relationship.
that's what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When the environment sort of pushes back, so that's how the music comes in as well. Like
yeah.
it pushes you right back into your seat, and you're like in this past life.
Hmm.
That's and that push sort of is sustained with the
Hmm.
not the double beats
Hmm.
that's coming in, that's been used in other
Hmm.
songs. There aren't double beats used, like there's slower
Yeah,
beats used in the song, which maintain that pushback that you get in the first go,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And
yeah.
like
Very, very unique.
crazy
But
stereo play, like
yeah,
that switching around. That reminded me a lot of you, sort of highlighting this factor in the bike song,
oh yeah, yeah,
last album, Pink Floyd's, I
yeah,
think, Bike, where they basically like, and you mentioned like your words were, it would be, someone would have to be out of their minds to be, to decide to do that.
yeah, yeah,
So that's sort of uh, what kicked in. Like, yeah, I mean, why would you do that? And with the voice in this, like they did it with the, I think,
yeah.
with the synth,
Hmm.
but here it's with the voice, and you, instead of like it's switching channels, it's sort of morphing into the channels,
Yeah,
right?
it's very
Like
smooth.
it's going like, and you feel it like, twisting to the other side and twisting back.
Yeah. It's
Like that's
yeah, I
how
mean
it's going. Yeah.
it has that element of like almost pulling you back into like a memory or like you're falling asleep, right? It's like a
Yeah.
dream effect where it's like sort of transitioning very slowly,
Dream effect.
right?
Yeah, that's a very good perspective.
Nice. And then yeah, from past life we get to Disciples, another short track at 1 minute and 48 seconds. 'Cause I was never sure, but it's something I used to. So yeah, this track, I think it starts, especially like the first half, and the way it starts off, it really reminds me of like like an old radio advert. When you're listening to the radio, and then they'd have like this, some advert would start like a jingle, and it has that quality to it, the way the sound is played and like the effect that they're using. It's almost like a small speaker playing, and it's a short track overall. So to me, it just kind of reminds me of like that sort of like an old radio advert or some short jingle being played.
Do you have any information about the names of, like, why the names of the song?
Disciples, again, I was struggling a little bit to figure out why it's called Disciples, because I think the lyrics, they're a little bit, it feels like, it's like someone like you've drifted apart with and they've changed or they've become a slightly different person. And, you're trying to sort of make sense of that. But I don't know the title Disciples. It might be something very personal to him, or maybe there's something in there that I haven't deciphered quite yet in the lyrics.
It's
Because it's like now it's like the world owes you, walking around like everybody should know you. But it's like something has changed with the person he's singing about. But I don't know how the
Yeah,
title plays into it.
exactly. Disciple would be someone who's obeying someone or sort
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
devoted to someone,
Or
but
learning, yeah.
learning from someone, but looking up to someone. However, but
Mm-hmm.
he's singing about someone who's
Mm-hmm.
gone, who sort of distanced themselves from
Yeah,
him, and they've changed in a bad way, and he's got so much left to talk about,
yeah,
but he can't.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
Exactly.
so
What
either
does that have to do with disciples?
he's the disciple
Yeah,
or something. I don't know.
yeah.
I
No,
don't know.
it's a
But
hard one to crack. I
yeah,
agree.
because the others like past life, less I know the better. Eventually, like they all make sense.
Yeah,
The whole lyrics are around that, but here it's not.
yeah.
Or I don't know if there's a perspective that we're not able to explore.
I mean,
Please do
well,
comment.
that it's it's that, but also like if you compare it, so I think so. Nang's the second track was 1 minute 47 seconds,
Hmm.
while this track is 1 minute 48 seconds, like a 1 second difference.
Hmm.
This I think definitely feels slightly longer than Nang's for some reason. I guess it's got more words in it, right? But it's interesting that this album does have these like very short, almost like compared to the rest of the tracks, they almost feel like concept tracks, considering the first track was
Yeah,
like 7 minutes long. There's a
yeah,
wide variety of song lengths. They're not following some strict order.
yeah. I mean, that's what he mentions also. That
Yeah, and like especially
he
in the
set
beginning
out
and the
to
first
break the
half is
rules
it
that he
almost
set
sounding
out.
like it's playing on a small speaker, and then the sound kicks in where it feels fuller, where you're like, okay, now this is something that
Yeah.
you can feel in the whole, like your
It's
headphones or speakers.
That's true. The sounds are very full of,
Yeah. But
like
the first
they
half
sort
of
of
it is
completed.
like it plays on like a small speaker, like there's that effect where it sounds like a sort of like a
Yeah,
radio.
till about 45 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice
Yeah.
short track, I'd say. To me, it just gave me a very sort of nostalgic vibe, especially because of that almost like a radio, like I said, like a radio advert.
Like that's in the beginning. That, and Um, I mean, that's been shown before in some visuals, but it's like the camera zooming into the radio and
Yeah.
till that's playing, and then like into the radio, into the television set,
And
and
then
then
transitioning into like the
into
full,
the
yeah.
which happens in the song, which that's the visual.
That's how I kind of pictured it as well while listening.
Yeah,
That sort of visual transition.
exactly.
And yeah, so then we get to Cause I'm a Man, which is 4 minutes and 2 seconds long. Once again, as it takes a hold, I am. So this track, I think right from the beginning, firstly, it does start off almost a little bit like a ballad, but there's this bass line, and I think this track at the core of it is it's that bass line that I think hooks you. And it's almost difficult to
Yeah,
notice once the track starts with all the other music playing and the singing, but it's just this
there's a
repeating
bass.
bass
Yeah,
line.
there's yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know it's so good that like just it really is, I think, the hook of the song. And he's got some interesting bass lines in a lot of songs, like the way a bass guitar is not just played with like four notes; it's like doing its own thing. There's a riff
Yeah.
going on that I think gives it that effect. But yeah, I think that's what the first thing is, like that's what pulled me. And also interestingly, I think from like a more like a thematic perspective, I did find this quote where it's like there was a bit of a I would say, let's say, controversy around this because like, oh, it's because I'm a man. And his words were, and I kind of, at least when you listen to the song, it feels like it. It's more of like man meaning like because I'm human. Like, look,
Yeah.
I answer to a greater calling. I'm just human. Like because I'm
While
a
it's
man.
also while it's also apt in some cases.
It's poetic,
Yeah.
but it also makes sense. But he did say that he was kind of excited in the sense of because generally there's not a lot of controversy with his stuff. So he
Mhm.
was like, I think the words he used was like he was excited to be like ruffling some feathers because I never do that. And so and it's interesting it did ruffle some feathers. But yeah, interesting track, right?
um, so for this, it's this sort of became my regular listening to. Like I used to jump back to this whenever I had to jump
Yeah,
back to currents.
yeah.
Um, and well, lyrically, it's written quite well. Like it's a foolproof writing kind of
Yeah.
because he's
Argument or
basically
whatever you want to call it.
he's
Yeah.
argument exactly, and
Yeah.
he's basically putting his point across that I'm a man. People understand that, it's not. I don't do the things I'm supposed to do. That's what it is, and um, but he also mentions how caring he is
Hmm.
at the same time. I am I don't have the line written down, but it sort of equates itself with his fault.
Hmm.
So he's also worried about her. So it kind of balances his situation out. But
Yeah.
then the point of the song is because I'm a man.
The only answer I've
So
got for you.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's a good snarky way out as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think musically as well, like even the melody, like what he's singing, it's so simple, the melody, but so effective and catchy and smooth, right? It doesn't feel it's repetitive, but it doesn't feel repetitive.
For example, now if I think about it, uh, like the synth that repeats is that
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
keeps repeating itself.
Yeah, and even in the
But
background, the
that's
bass
yeah.
line, it's just repeating.
When you're mentioning the bass line, putting this song in that perspective,
Hmm.
I would. Uh, so one, this just a not about this album. It's a fun fact. Um, so it's been a big deal in the music history that the Doors never had a bassist with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I always wondered as to how, because Pink Floyd has a bassist, Roger
Mm-hmm.
Waters, who has been, and you just kind of, mm, I mean, he's sometimes the one who's sort of flowing you through the song.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you've got to know. So I was just trying to find my answer to why a bass is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to find it, but you mentioning that the bass in this and in others is so catchy.
Yeah.
So it's just still a wonder for me of how the Doors did it.
Yeah, without a bit. I mean, that's the thing with bass because it's so subtle. It's not like a guitar solo or something that
Yeah,
you hear, and most people don't even realize that it's so in the background. But
it
I think
keeps you in
if
the.
done
I
well,
think
like
it
in this
just keeps you
track,
in the rhythm,
yeah,
even in
it
this
really
track. Yeah,
forms the core, like the
yeah.
heart of that rhythm, right, in the
Mhm.
background. And I think in this song as well, like when you go from like the verse to like the pre-chorus to chorus, I feel like there's like a slight shift in the pitch or the scale, like the way it's musically written, but it's still very simple but effective. Like it feels fresh, the music. I think that's why it doesn't start feeling stale, even though it's sort of
Mhm.
repeating. But yeah, interesting track. And then we get
Yeah.
to Reality in Motion at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. So the music, the intro music, it sort of has this modulation, and again, it reminds me of like like a tape going off pitch. There's like that quality to it, when it begins.
Yeah.
But I think overall, this track it feels there's like an element that feels very 90s, like the chorus.
Yeah.
Uh, there's like this echo in the vocals. Like I could imagine people roller
Echo
skating to this
singing
song.
together. Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Right. You can
It's
imagine people like just roller skating as this song is playing.
and now saying that like it's a uh, it's a with the new age technology, it's a Backstreet Boys song.
Yeah, done in this like synthy way. I mean, even the bridge at like I think the 1 minute 11 second mark,
Yeah.
or like that they sort of the melody breaks and it goes in slightly different direction. Again, even all of that part, it feels so. There's like a 90s element, but it doesn't feel dated. It still sounds. It's got that refreshing quality that
Yeah.
I think overall this album has. Like all the tracks, they sound very, very refreshing, but it's still very it pulls me back to like that 90s vibe or like you feel like you're listening to an old track that you really
It
love.
is. It is. I could imagine this in like a '90s themed high school movie.
Oh, exactly, like opening up and you got
Yeah.
like it opens up with this shot of a kid roller skating to its theme song and then throwing his bag or something.
But
Right.
yeah, like it would be. I mean, the music is quite fit for that, but I think the lyrics talk about like things falling into perspective,
Yeah.
and one by one they're falling into perspective. So that reality is
Mm-hmm.
still coming in motion, and things are going to happen, and that eventually reality is going to
Yeah.
happen. So um, uh, that's just how the song rolls.
Yeah. I mean, to
Yeah,
me, and it sort of reminds me the lyrics. They put me in like almost like a nightclub situation where he's like either like dancing or approaching someone, and because the music and even like the lyrics, like it's way too real. I'm way too sober. Like lack of composure. I'm walking over. Like what will I do? I never had a chance to. And it's like you're approaching the girl, and there's and obviously that 90s like roller skating disco-y music. It feels like he's in that sort of environment, and things are happening, reality in motion.
it would even go with a scene, where the girl is standing sitting next to the bar counter, and the guy goes up and he takes her hand, and they start like soloing, and there's like a circle of people, and they're
Yeah,
solo. Well, they're doing their duet, dance
Yeah. Exactly.
and
Exactly.
on this song, and it just works out because it's one of those 90s scenes as well as this kind
Yeah.
of it's the 90s, yeah, by
It's a
mm,
great 90s vibe.
yeah, 90s vibing song with
Right.
as like, yeah, new instruments,
Yeah.
electronic instruments.
It's got a refreshing feel twist on it, let's say. Right.
Yeah, Backstreet Boys come
Yeah.
back.
And yeah, so then from reality in motion, we get to love slash paranoia, which is 3 minutes and 6 seconds long.
And it's true.
I've heard those words before.
So one of the things I notice with this track, like straight off the bat, it's like the lines are sort of like offbeat. Like it's not. It's like he starts the sentence halfway through. Like I may not be as honest as I thought to be now that when the walls go like yeah, and throughout the song, even when like the beats and all the music comes in, it's still like the lines are weirdly broken off mid-sentence. It's not
Mhm.
like your general rhyming scheme that you follow, and it gives the song this again like it's when you're listening to it, it keeps you alert because your brain is trying to sing along, but it's difficult to sing along because it's not actually following the pattern you think it should follow. And I don't know, it just brings it this unique feel, right? uh Love and Paranoia.
I mean, so Love and Paranoia, like, I really like the name because
Yeah.
it's sort of but the opposite ends while they are also codependent,
Yeah,
right?
it's like that
And
obsessiveness, right?
so but like going into the lyrics, like it just get
Yeah.
got me thinking into got me in a loop, which is like so it's insecurity is like, or you finding out about
Hmm.
the insecurity, or the singer is the culprit, because he says like, I'm the phony one, only one,
Yeah,
because he thought that she's cheating, then he cheated,
he started
and
spying on her in a sense because
and
he was
then
like
she
paranoid.
wasn't really cheating.
Yeah, he was paranoid, and I think he started spying, and it's he's got that line like true love is bringing it out of
Yeah,
me, and it's like sometimes you're in those relationships where it's driving you crazy, and you're like for him he's unable, and that sort of theme is there in this album quite a bit,
right.
where he's like obsessing over it or he's imagining it. The less I know, the better is a good example of that.
And then
Um,
he also ends
and
it with like, "Girl, I'm sorry." So like, so
he
he
messed
did
up.
the wrong thing by spying on her. So he was only spying
Yeah,
on her.
yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there's like a fine line between, I'd say, love and obsession. And I think for him in this track or in the storyline, however you put it, he messes up by spying on her, and there's like this weird regret to it, and
Mhm.
that's why it's like he doesn't know if it's love or if it's paranoia, right? Or if there's even a distinction between the two for him at this point,
But I really like the
right?
name. Like
Yeah.
how imbalanced but balanced.
Yeah, it's honest as well, right?
It's, yeah, true to
Mm,
their nature.
yeah. And then we get to the last track on the album, New Person, Same Old Mistakes. It's 6 minutes, 2 seconds long.
I know that you think it's fake. Maybe fake's what I like.
So I think opens up the song again, very groovy bass line that sort of, it starts off with just that bass line, but it's on like a synth or whatever.
Mhm.
And then as the song continues, it turns into the bass line, which sort of carries on, but it grabs your attention really sharply, right?
I I mean this. So yes, I'm changing was my first favorite. Then this took over. Yes, I'm changing because again, like the name is it's very witty,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
and um, and the beats, like it's
yeah,
you can play it to dance, you can play it to
yeah,
chill, you can play it to sort of set a vibe.
yeah,
You can have like a full on party, neon party vibe
yeah,
with the song.
exactly. And it still suits,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I think musically, it is very like there's that string
Musically,
instrument
it's
that,
very
yeah.
futuristic, I feel. Like with
So
with I don't know. So it's got that part of which I think can be psychedelic because it's completely different, and then it slowly transitions into back to the song.
yeah, yeah. So actually, I've got some interesting nuggets around
Mhm.
that, which I'll get to in a sec. So at the 1 minute 5 second mark, there's like a string instrument that's sort of playing, the different channels, and it again gives it this unique lounge type vibe,
Mhm.
right? And then at the 3 minute mark, again, man, I know it's hard to digest. Like the melody sort of twists around a little bit,
Yeah.
but to me, one of the most interesting things happened at the 4 minute 2 second mark. So there's this music playing, and again, it's one of those things where you could hear it's playing the music in reverse,
Mhm.
and it's a whole chunk of the song which is almost playing in reverse, and I was very curious as to like what would it sound backwards, right? Like that part. So I'll play that part. So let me get to. So this part is backwards because you could. It's
Yeah. That's the
it's like
part I'm
goes.
talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So you hear it clearly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I actually went into Audition and I got the track and I reversed it to see what it sounds like, and
Yeah.
this is what it sounds like.
So it sounds like that.
So what it is it's one melody playing forwards and one melody playing backwards. So if you pay attention at the 4 minute 2 second mark, you hear the backwards part because that sounds louder, but there's
Right.
these bells playing in the background
Right.
which have not been reversed. Like the sounds of those bells have not been reversed. And so
Yeah.
when you reverse that part, it's exactly the same thing because then you're hearing those bells in reverse while the bells in the foreground are playing in in the correct order, but it's like the same melody. So if you took a series of notes, you played it reverse and you played it in the order at the same time. That's what he's done. It's like a musical palindrome. Right? It's like the
That's what
same
it's
backwards
called.
and forwards.
I mean,
I don't
is
well
that
a
what's
palindrome is generally like a word, right? That's the same backwards and forwards.
right?
So it's like that, but with
Uh,
like
but
notes.
music, yeah, musical fun.
I don't know what it's actually called in like actual music theory, but I was just because I heard it and it's such a long chunk and it's playing backwards and it's got that psychedelic element to it, and I really wanted to see like, okay, if I just reverse this, what is it going to sound like? And that's when I
Yeah.
realized it's playing both. Like you hear it and it's playing it backwards, and there's these bells in the background playing forwards, and so when you reverse it, it sounds exactly the same. This must be like the deepest of dives. But it's interesting. Like how who comes up with this type of stuff, or like how do you come up with that this type of stuff?
Like,
Yeah,
it's a beach effect.
yeah. So, but yeah, a very interesting track, I think, and a very good track to end on as well. And it is long, like
Mm.
the first track, not as long, but it goes through all of these different transitions, as we were
Yeah.
saying, throughout the track before coming to an end. But yeah, so I mean, overall, I'd say this album, to me, it's very refreshing, and it almost sounds like the music is something I couldn't ever really get sick of. Like I could hear it as many times, but it always just sounds so unique and refreshing, even though I've heard it so many times. When I hear it again, it still sounds new to me. all these tracks on this album, right?
Well, funny thing is that this is the only album that I've been able to play in any setting that I've been in, rather
Oh,
than
this
any
works.
of the other albums
Moods.
that we've been through so
Yeah.
far. This is the only one that I have played, and people have actually enjoyed it because it's bumpy. I mean, they don't care about the words, but it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a beat, it's got a hook to it.
Yeah. It suits all
Yeah,
the different moods, and it's sort of just,
yeah, yeah. It's
yeah,
chill,
very
and
uniquely
it's chill.
done.
It's a chill
It's very
album.
chill, right?
Yeah,
Excellent. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm glad I chose this album because I mean the other albums are also great. I think like if you listen to like Inner Speaker or Lonerisms, like the two earlier albums, again they've got a very distinct style
mhm,
and they're very unique in their own way. And even the last album as well, like they're all very different. There's definitely an element of evolution. So the next album, The Slow Rush, which came out in 2020, it sort of takes this sort of dance thing and almost R&B, and it sort of really doubles down on it uh,
right.
in a strange sense. And one of my favorite songs is still Lost in Yesterday, which is from that album. But I think Currents to me is just, it is Tame Impala, like it's the signature Tame Impala to me, where it's experimental, but it's still not, it still blends into like mainstream music,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But it's
very
still a
much.
very concept type album.
Very, very correctly put. Yeah,
Yeah, excellent. So any other closing
great. Yeah,
thoughts?
it's mm, it was it was just very fun to get into this album. I mean,
Yeah,
like
I'm
listening to
glad
this
you
over
enjoyed
and
it,
over,
Rosie.
and because I was able to play it with anyone around, it was
Yeah,
easier for me to listen to it more than others. But yeah, this was. I mean, it was fun to. Yeah, it was fun. To just go through a passion project
yeah,
as I got to know further about it being a solo
Kevin.
man,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
solo man show. So
Mhm.
that's the most fascinating part about it.
It's all coming out of one guy's head, and it's not people collaborating in a traditional sense, right?
Yeah, and the room he's doing it from is, I
Yeah,
mean, that's like a like a creative haven kind of space.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. It's his space.
yeah, I mean, it's got
Yeah.
stuff that he can do, and he does stuff with it
Mhm.
with a with a view.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, folks. See you again in another week or two or three. No, we'll try and be on time this time. And yeah, with something different. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.